Hello, everyone. I want to welcome you all to the 18th Annual Tallgrass Film Festival. My name is Hannah Bothner. I am the short film coordinator for the festival. Thank you all for watching and for tuning in. We also would like to extend a special thank you to all of our sponsors. We could not be doing this without you. If you are enjoying your Tallgrass experience, please let everyone know on Facebook and Instagram, tag us at Tallgrass Film, and use the hashtag Tallgrass2020. So I'd like to welcome to the Zoom today a couple of directors from our LGBTQ plus short film block. We have Thomas Hescott from the film The Act. He is the director of that film. Give us a wave so that we know which box.
Hi there.
There we go, perfect. And then John Haley from The Longest Walk. He is the director of that film as well. Thank you both so much for being here today. We're really excited to get to talk to you about your films.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm gonna start out with a question for so one side of it will be more for Thomas, and the other side will be for John, just because we've got a narrative and a documentary here. So for Thomas, I'd love to know your source material, your inspiration for making the film, where that came from.
Thank you so much for screening our film. It's wonderful to have it playing, and one of the few good things about the current state of the world is that we get to zoom in to so many festivals around the world, which we wouldn't be able to do in another time. So there are one or two pluses, I guess.
Yeah.
The Act, I suppose, if we go right back, it probably started about 20 years ago. There's a really famous bookshop in London. It features, if anyone's seen the film Pride, it features in there, called Gaze the Word. It's kind of probably the most important bookshop for LGBTQ history in the UK, maybe, I guess. And I used to live near there, and I would always go in and pick up books, so whatever was in there, really. And there was a book of interviews with men who were alive between the two acts of parliament that made it illegal in this country. And I just got fascinated by the stories and thought one day I'd love to tell that story. And then jump forward to 2013, and we were given a commission by a theatre in London called Oval House Theatre to make a piece of theatre, a sort of piece of storytelling theatre about gay counterculture in the UK, in London. And that's where it started. It was a one-man play. It was storytelling. The book was a sort of inspiration, but none of the stories in that book sort of made it into the film, into the play originally. It was all more their kind of dialogue and the ways they spoke. There was but that's where it sort of started, and we used some of the songs, the underground songs from the time, some verbatim Houses of Parliament discussions, and so it sort of was a sort of smashed together sort of documentary evidence with storytelling, with song, that kind of thing. And then about a year ago, we wanted to make a short film, and we suddenly realised that what we had from the play would translate beautifully into film. So that's where it sort of came from. We adapted it into the film that you see today.
Absolutely, added some characters, so it wasn't one man.
No, yes. We one man plays all the characters on stage. We can't more than one actor when it one of the advantages of film, you can have more than one actor.
Yeah, absolutely. And then John, I'd love to know how you found your subject and what inspired you to tell his story.
Definitely, yeah. So first of all, thanks again for screening the film, and it's great to be able to reach audiences even in these circumstances. But it was this was kind of a story I'd been interested in telling for a while. So I'm gay and was raised in the Catholic Church, and I kind of noticed some personal tension there, but also knew that tension was happening with a lot of folks on across the country, across the world. So I think there was initially kind of a point where I kind of was distanced from the church, and then kind of like came back to it in some way, and was just kind of interested in that tension, or whether it even was tension for some people. Maybe for some people it makes complete sense, and those two identities are not in conflict with each other, which is one of the themes of the film. So I just started researching, and I live here in Chicago, and read about this this story that was published about a priest who made the decision to come out publicly, and a Catholic priest, and just reached out to him and contacted him and said, I'm really interested in your story. I felt some personal connection there, and we met for coffee, and the rest is the film, I guess. And I mean, I think it's, with documentary, it's always, you know, there needs to be some sensitivity there, because it's someone's real life, it's someone's real story, and I think you know, that forming a connection, a strong connection, is important, and luckily I was able to do that, and kind of collaborate throughout the process to make sure I was you know, telling it accurately, and there was some of that risk, I think, removed, given that he had already come out, so he had already kind of made that decision. But I think it kind of translated nicely just into a short film that's kind of like going through the motions of life as a priest, but also understanding how sexuality comes into play with that.
Absolutely. So you know, you talk a little bit about I'm always curious to know how documentarians make their subjects feel comfortable in front of the camera, and especially telling such personal stories to himself, and maybe really tough material. What can you talk a little bit about how, you know, how he seems like he's just talking to you, like you just started rolling while you're over coffee with him, you know?
No, and it's and that is really important for documentary making, the people you're working with feel comfortable. And I think, you know, there was like a very honest conversation at the beginning where I just said, like, I'm, you know, looking for your true story. I'm not looking for a gotcha. I'm not looking to tear down the Catholic Church or what. I'm just interested in your story. I think it's interesting, and I think it's powerful. And then I think also there's a tendency, and I feel it too, to want to rush into an interview with your participant right away. And I always felt that too, but instead I spent some time filming church, filming his daily life, and then we actually ended up shooting 2 interviews. And the first one I just didn't love, kind of. I don't know, it felt like it was still kind of that getting to know each other process. And so everything in the film is actually from a second interview that I did, which obviously sounds like a lot of work, and it was, but I think, I don't know, I think there was a friendship that grew out of it too, and is still lasting, which I think is important too. And people will warn you about making friendships in documentary and how that can get messy, and it's certainly true, but I think if there's trust on both sides and appropriate boundaries, it's okay, and you get better results that way too.
Absolutely. That's really wonderful. Thomas, you talked a little bit about the music that you use. I think you talked about it in terms of the play that you made. Music is sort of my blind spot, so I don't have a lot of knowledge of music history, but I was so intrigued when he gets into the bar and then we first turn on the jukebox and there's this song is that from the 60s? Is that, I'd love to know about that.
Oh, I'm so glad you picked up on that. Those songs are from the 60s, and they were the songs we sort of adapted for the play as well. And then you get to hear them in the bar. Are the only things that you hear musically that aren't score. We have a fantastic score. And so they're American songs. There was an American underground record label called Camp Records. And if you do a bit of digging on the internet, they are all archived there. I think they're also on Spotify these days. Well, I first found them because an ex-boyfriend put one of them on a mixtape for me, or mix CD. And then when we were researching this play, I wanted to find them again. So I had to Google the lyrics and found it. Now, of course, it's all on Spotify, and it's so much easier. It was. They're not. We had to go into a lot of depth into where they came from for copyright, but they aren't attributed to anyone. It was an underground label, and they would take old classic songs and old standards and they'd rewrite the lyrics, like Greensleeves or something like that. They'd rewrite the lyrics with sort of filthy, dirty, brilliant queer lyrics, which are just so much fun. So we decided that in our bar they would play these songs. That was and it's but they are 100% accurate. They are a thing from the period, and they're great fun and very very silly, and well worth an hour or so's listening if you get a chance.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, it really sets the scene when you get into the bar, especially because I think from my perspective, a lot of the film is he is like trying to find his home and who he is, and everything else outside of the bar feels so heavy. And then when he gets in the bar, it's like, he makes a friend. He's at home. He gets to take a breath and relax. And then there's these really amazing, goofy songs that kind of parallel his experience in a way too, because now that you're telling me about the underground records, like this underground bar that he found, and it's absolutely so fascinating.
Absolutely. And I think that story is exactly what we were trying to, that is the story. It's very, very loosely, we sort of used as a sort of little bonus Easter egg, if you want to spot it. It's sort of the Orpheus and the Underworld story of losing your love and going underground. So that was sort of very loosely in the back of our head when we put it together. But everything, the way we lit it and the way we shot, everything certainly in his office and in his bedsit before he meets Jimmy, it is very formal. It's very static. There's pretty much no movement in the way we shot it, and then as soon as we get into the bar, we tend to move on to a sort of steady cam. It's slightly freer. There's a lot more color in it. So that was all very much part of it. And you're right. The idea is that it's less, although it's a love story, it's less about finding his love. It's more about the fact that at the end of it, he's found his family. That's what we're interested in. It's a family drama, and it's about the family you choose, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So wonderful. John, I'm curious about filming inside the church. We have at least a couple scenes that I can remember that we have patrons inside the church, and but then you also get those absolutely gorgeous shots of the ceiling and the I mean, Catholic churches are known for being just so beautiful. So I'd love to know about filming that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was, and that was again where trust came into play, where Father Mike was able to kind of say, we're going to have someone filming. If you're not okay with that, let me know. And everyone seemed to be fine with it. But yeah, I mean, I really lucked out with the fact that the church was as beautiful as it was. And I think that was something that I was interested in thematically as well, is kind of this, there is kind of this history of Catholicism and this history of an ongoing present of animosity, I would say, toward the LGBTQ community. And I think that was something I never wanted to stray from, because I think there are some folks who might say, like, I don't think you should have made this film. I think, there is still this oppression. And I think that's a completely legitimate perspective to have. And I think, personally, the Catholic Church needs to change in so many ways. But I was kind of, I think, in kind of the stained glass and in the ceiling and all this artwork, you kind of get a sense of that history, that this like institutional power, and kind of how that might affect where Father Mike fits into all of that. And so I think it just kind of gave a space for this personal story to play out in, and maybe introduce some of that conflict. And that's why, having like the pastoral letter, the text of the pastoral letter against that backdrop, I think made sense. And but it also was just a beautiful setting. And I think the film is kind of a quiet story of identity, and there is kind of a quiet silence in some ways to all that artwork. And it's kind of stark in some ways too. And I think that speaks also to the church's position in and kind of this reckoning it's going through too, of where I think a lot of younger generations are finding problems with the messaging. And I think that that's absolutely legitimate too. So, yeah.
Really amazing. On the flip side of that, Thomas, you had to completely create the 1960s, and you did such a wonderful job of that, from the settings to the costumes to the look of the film. Can you talk a little bit about doing all of that, and especially, I'm always curious making a period film on short films budget, because I know that can be very, very difficult.
Absolutely. I mean, our budget wasn't vast, but I think we were certainly on the higher end of a short film budget, and we were very, very lucky that we were able to work with a really decent budget, which you need when you're doing period. And we're then able to, because of that and because of the cast we had and the great team we had, pull in some additional support from elsewhere. It started really with the locations, and we have a superb producer, Electra Pizzi, who helped us, who really worked with me to find those locations. And actually, those locations needed very little work. The bar needed a lot of kind of stripping away of contemporary pictures and things, but like the office and things, it was as much just there were sort of great bare bones that we could then add furniture in. We had a superb costume designer, and it's also about finding things that don't necessarily look period, but the sort of clothes that those characters would wear, so that they feel kind of comfortable and they feel like the characters, not that they look like they've just stepped off a catwalk. So we actually talked about the fact a number of them, the lead character probably wouldn't be in the height of fashion. So he's probably a few years, he's not sort of 1960s catwalk, he's probably 1950s in some of his styles. So it was as much of that as about the character. And then we also spent a lot of time talking about the colours and how we light that and how we graded that, because we wanted it to have a slight feeling of that kind of Technicolor 1960s feel to it as well, so that it wasn't simply about the locations and the costumes being 1965. We also had that sort of seeping into the grade, as it were, as well.
So wonderful. Yeah, that's really cool. I love the costumes in it and everything. I have a question for both of you, and we can start with Thomas on this one. What do you want people to take away from your film?
Whatever they want, to an extent. I sometimes think that's sort of their business, not mine. As long as they have a reaction to it, I'm happy. I hope it moves them to an extent. One of the things that I think we probably started out with, and has been most gratifying from people who've watched it, is that it tells a piece of our history and it's our heritage, particularly within the UK kind of political scene, that people don't know. And I think there's been some great comments from younger gay or lesbian, bisexual people who watched it and who just picked up on things that they didn't know about our history. And that's really exciting. But I don't think we started out to educate anyone. I don't think that's what we're there for. But I love it when it unlocks stories that people might not have known. Because I think that I'm particularly interested in that idea of, telling the history of our community, if you like.
Absolutely. And same question to you, John.
Yeah, definitely. I think what interested me about this story was the possibility to kind of challenge our perceptions or how we view certain identities, or how we view institutions too, and how people interact with institutions. And so I think, yeah, people will certainly take away what they will. I think I was trying to start asking those questions a little bit, to interrogate identities a little bit. And so I hope that people who watch it kind of understand that you can't view something as, I think our conceptions of what it means to be Catholic, or what it means to be an individual within the Catholic Church, I think that those can be challenged. And I think having someone who's in an institutional role as a priest, who's who fits these identities that might seem contradictory and actually finds no personal contradiction between them. I think, I hope that it kind of makes people kind of interrogate those identities and how they show up in all areas of life. I guess it's easy to assume that we know what everything is or how everyone fits in these institutions, and I don't think we do. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both. Excuse me. Thank you both for so much for your time and for speaking with us about your amazing films and for your films as well. I really hope people enjoyed watching this block and exploring, identity and, who we are as people and history and the future. And yeah, I really hope people enjoyed everything. Speaking of the future, I one last question for each of you. I'd love to know what is next for your film, or what is next for you. Anything that you want to send people to, Instagram, Twitter, anything like that. We can start with you, Thomas.
Well, it's been a funny year in this country, all over the world, but I think in this country what seems to have happened is all production kind of came to a halt and everyone just threw all their energy into development. So there's quite a lot of things that are kind of bubbling away in development, but far too early to kind of say what they are yet. But and actually a lot of things from all of us that made the act, we've been sort of working on a couple of things together. So I'm hopeful that things will spark off from the film. Film's just started its festival run a few months ago, so it's still quite early on in that. And it's playing some really exciting festivals over the next couple of months all over the world. And you can find out about that. Our social media, our Twitter handle is the Act Film. I think it's the same on Instagram. And we're also releasing some behind the scenes stuff as well on there. So that's quite fun to look at. But yeah, it's sort of early days, so we're just seeing what happens.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've heard a lot of writing stuff in these Q&As, and honestly that's really exciting to hear no matter what, because yeah,
2021 will have some of the best polished scripts ever, or overworked,
exactly,
depending on your viewpoint.
Yeah, all of them have had 5 to 10 passes. John, same question.
Yeah, so this is actually the first festival that I've premiered this film at, which was,
I didn't know we were your premiere. Maybe I did.
Yep.
That's so exciting. Yay.
Yeah, this is the premiere, so it's very exciting. Hopefully we'll play at some other film festivals, still kind of in that process, but it was great I've admired this festival for a while, and so it's great to be a part of it. As far as anything else I'm working on, I'm currently working on a short documentary about a political candidate running in Wisconsin. And Wisconsin's kind of a huge battleground state for 2020. And I think through this one race, you kind of see a lot of these big issues that are dominating the 2020 race play out. It's been interesting doing socially distant filmmaking and always having a mask on and everything and just being responsible, but it's important to be doing that too. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both so much. We will keep an eye out for what you guys both have going on in the future. Those very polished scripts and polished post-production of films. Thank you all out there so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this discussion. I hope you enjoyed their films. Make sure to let us know, and we can always keep the discussion going on our social media. We're at Tallgrass Film, and keep watching films out there.